A blow, a kiss. Despite their bad luck, Elby had enjoyed the night. Just the pipe smell of his father and the warmth of him in the truck's cab beside him was enough. It did not matter that they had caught 10 salmon and buried them in the sand for safekeeping and not found them again. The Tilly lamp tinkled, cooling between his feet on the floor of the cab. Ahead, the unlit road rolled out. A motorcycle whipped past, going their way. Elby saw the small red light for a moment, and then it was gone. "He's flying," his father murmured. "Yeah." Elby felt his chin on his chest. He heard the lamp tinkle, his eyes closed. He looked up again, felt himself plummeting forward, heard his father pumping the brakes. "He's down!" bellowed his father. Elby pulled himself away from the windscreen. His father was already out of the cab and in the vortex of the headlights. On the road, the motorcycle was sprawled, intertwined with the rider, an ugly spillage. Against the blackness of machine and leather, Elby saw blood. He did not move on the seat. He held the Tilly lamp hard between his feet. He had not let it fall and break. His father pulled the machine from the man who groaned. He took the helmet off. He held up the man's hands. They were the colour of bleeding pork. Elby had never seen so much human blood, though he had seen cut pigs, and the jugulars of salmon cannoning red on white sand. Groans became shouts. Without warning, the fallen man lashed out at Elby's father and pulled him down to the ground by the ears, and the two men locked limbs and rolled on the bloody bitumen in the headlights of the truck. Elby did not move. He held the Tilly lamp tight until his thighs ached. He heard the wet sound of fists connecting. Crickets and the quiet idle of the engine underlay this noise. Beyond the grovelling men, past the point of the truck's headlights, there was only darkness. In a moment there was quiet. Crickets chanted. The engine idled. "Elby!" Elby slid out of the cab as soon as he heard his father's voice. Every line and feature was stark in the glare. Blood ran from his father's lips. The fallen rider lay, gored jaws apart, beneath him. "Come here, Elby!" His father motioned with a free hand. Elby smelt blood, and beer and petrol and hot metal. He saw a translucent disc on his father's cheek, and for a moment he thought it was a tear, but it was a fish scale. "He's unconscious. We shouldn't move him. I'll have to call for help. Come over further. Now get on him." Elby was astride the bleeding, still man. "Put your feet on his hands. He won't move. He's out." Elby wondered why it was necessary to sit on a man who was not going to move. He looked at the blood streaming from his father's lips. "He's in shock. He didn't know what he was doing," his father said. "I won't be long. Stay put." Elby felt his shoulder briefly squeezed and heard his father's boots mashing back to the truck. The lights veered from him, and the truck passed, and the tail lights became tiny red points. Eyes that closed and left him with the dark. He heard the man's breathing, felt the rise and fall of leather, listened to the cricket hymns, wondering what should be done, how he should behave towards this man who had struck his father. In the dark, he could not see the places where skin had been pared away. He saw no human blood, but he could smell it. "He was only helping you," he said to the man. The leather jacket groaned beneath him. Elby wondered what his mother would be doing. Probably ringing Sergeant Fobles, he thought. She'll be angry and blame Dad. Kisses. Elby knew she would use her kisses like blows, punishment for them. The leather jacket was wet in parts and torn. It shocked him that leather should rip like that. It was the strongest stuff there was, and only time and sweat and constant fatigue could waste it. Not those few seconds when that single tail light disappeared, and this man skidded along the road like a moist piece of moss. "You're lucky we were here," he said, shifting position on the mount. "You're lucky my dad's going for help." Town was only 20 minutes' drive from the coast. Farmland stretched right to the high water mark. Elby had seen cattle on the beaches, wallowing in the surf. He hoped his father found a farm with a phone. "Come on, Dad, come on, Dad, come on, Dad." He often prayed to his father in his absence. God, he decided, was just like his dad, only bigger. It was easy to pray to him and hope God got the message on relay. "Dad." Elby flinched. The injured man had spoken. "Dad." Elby's body shrank into itself. He waited for the man to move, to attack. "Dad." "Yes," Elby whispered. His throat was full of heart. Oh, Dad, I'm sorry. It was coming back." Elby listened as the man began to weep. He rode the man's sobs high on his chest, and it hurt him to hear, like the sound of a tractor engine turning over on a dying battery. "It's all right," Elby said to him. "It's all right." The sobbing continued, jogging him, making the leather groan and the seat of his pants hot until Elby thought that he might be sick, or get up and run away into the bush at the side of the road. But he did not run. He bent down and kissed the wet, prickled face. The sobbing stopped. Even the crickets paused. Elby tasted salt, felt a jumble of things lurching in him. He felt not sick, just full. It was that moment when Elby began to worry that the man might die. The lights forking out over the crown of the hill took him by surprise. He watched them dip and sweep, disappear and reappear, until he could hear the sound of the truck's engine. In the piercing white light of the truck's lamps, as it stopped dead with a shriek of brakes, Elby knew what it must be to be a rabbit, powerless, snowblind, vulnerable to atrocity. The light seemed to ricochet inside his head, confounding him. He heard his father's boots. "You all right? There's blood on your face." Elby felt himself swept up into his father's arms. He yielded to it. His father hugged him, touched his cheeks with his fingers and his tobacco breath. On his own feet again, Elby found his voice and asked, "Is he gonna die?" "Dunno," his father said. "I don't know enough about it." "Oh, there's no phones. I should have known in the first place. Man, it'd have to be an idiot. We'll take him in ourselves like we should have anyhow. We didn't want to move him." Yeah, his father seemed to take comfort in this. Elby tried to stay awake in the warm cab, seduced by the smell of his father and the crooning note of the engine. The sweat had dried on him. His arms still ached. He had never lifted anything so heavy, so awkward as that fallen motorcyclist. They had tried to get his contorted, cold machine in too, but had to leave it at the roadside. Every few minutes Elby turned to see through the window the shape of the injured man beneath the tarpaulin on the tray, beside the rods and sacks and engine parts. He held the telly lamp hard between his heels. It kept him awake. A duty. "Should have known better," his father muttered. The featureless road wandered left and right, studded with the eyes of beer cans, mile pegs, rabbits. Somewhere in his fog of fatigue, Elby hoped his mother would understand. She loved them. She didn't like them to be late. Town was mostly asleep at this time of night. Only the pub and the petrol station were open. It was a fuel town at night, a farm town by day. As they pulled into the sudden brilliance of the petrol station tarmac, Elby saw Mr. Stevens wave to his father, a wave without hands. His father got out. After a moment, Mr. Stevens came over. Elby listened. "That's Wilf Beacon's boy," Mr. Stevens said, peering in the back at the man on the tray beneath the tarp. "Dead?" "No." Elby wished his father would check. He was afraid. But he saw the tarp rising and falling. "Where's Beacon then?" "Across the road." Elby knew that in this town, across the road meant in the pub. The pub frightened Elby. From out on the veranda, it was a roar, A sour smell, unknown. His father poked his head in the window. "Stay here, son." Not long after, Elby saw two men stumble out onto the pub veranda. One was his father. The other man had him by the throat, and his father had the man's forelock in his fist, shouting. Elby saw his father hit the man in the chest. The man fell to his knees. His father helped him up, and they came across the road to Stephen's garage. "Just pull yourself together," he heard his father say with a harshness that made his skin prickle. "Where's his suitcase? He had a sleeping bag. You've done him over. What have you been doing to my boy?" "Picking him up off the side of the road. He's drunk like you. He's hurt, you bloody idiot." Elby hated that man. He couldn't remember seeing him before. He was not a farmer. Might have been a farmhand for someone he didn't know. He didn't care. He hated him. He wanted the man to see his son, and to weep like the son had wept out on the road with that hopeless starter motor sound in the dark. His father shoved the man around to the back of the truck. Elby's insteps were cold from pressing against the grimy little back window. The man staggered up onto the tray and knelt with a thud beside the body under the tarp. "Little coward, leave a man alone. Own father. Own father." The rider's bloody face was immobile. The old man's hands touched it, lifted the head off the truck tray. "And what have you got to say for yourself? They bring you back to me." The sound of the rider's head being dropped onto the metal tray vibrated through the whole truck like the sound of a mallee root being tossed in. Again, thwump. The father beat his son's head against the tray. Elby's father looked helpless, did not move. Elby got out. The flatbed of the truck resounded again. The jumble inside Elby pushed upward. He wanted to be sick. He snatched the telly lamp by the handle. He heard the startled voice of his father. He swung the lamp up and over, a bowling movement. Glass and sound and splintery light happened all at once, and his father had hold of him as the drunk old man lay still on his son, stinking of beer and kerosene. As they turned off the bitumen road into their own run of gravel to the yellow-lit house down in the valley, Elby ended the silence with a question. He was startled by his own toneless delivery. Why did that man hit his son for getting hurt? His father sighed. He sounded relieved that the silence was finished. "I don't know, boy." "Would you do that to me?" The truck slewed and stopped. "Lord, no. God almighty, no." "He was going home," Elby said. His father's mouth moved. He reached out and put his knuckles to Elby's cheek, left them there for a long time, as though still waiting for words to come. "Sorry about the salmon," he said at last. "I should have known better." The truck moved forward again. Elby felt those knuckles on his cheek still, and knew, full to bursting, that that was how God would touch someone. He neither moved nor spoke, and the truck trundled on.